Hello, 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 friends. Welcome, welcome. As I said, my name is Susan Stewart. I'm an instructional technology teacher on special assignment. I like to call myself a tech coach. It's a lot easier to say. From Central California. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is early literacy. Before my role as a technology coach, I spent 14 years teaching kindergarten and second grade. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a tickle in my throat, so I will try my best not to cough in the mic. um, but I am really glad to talk today about early literacy, specifically teaching early literacy in a remote or blended learning environment, because for so long, when you talk about early literacy, we talk about small group instruction, right? And what does that look like when we're in this virtual environment? So we're going to be talking about just some quick tips for the idea of teaching early literacy and some of the different tools we're going to use. You know, one thing to know about when it comes to tools, we know one size doesn't fit all, right? Ever. It's never one size fits all. So you might see some of these ideas and be like, oh, well, I don't really use that one. What I love about this is that so many of these ideas transfer back and forth between the different tools that are available there. So we're going to talk some googly stuff, we're going to talk some seesaw stuff, but most importantly, we're going to be talking about developing early readers. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get rolling. Here we go. Got the buttons, we're good. How to be, how to teach early literacy in a remote or blended learning environment. I am Susan, that's me, woohoo. But just some quick overview of what we're going to cover here in this, little short 30-minute workshop. Tip number one really is this. We're talking about the foundations of literacy. What are the foundations of literacy? We're going to dive into there and make sure that we understand. As a teacher, it's important that we understand what those components are that make up early literacy. Tip number two, make sure no matter what we do when our kids are learning with us or whether they're learning remotely, that we give them opportunities to interact with words and text. It's so important that our learners have that opportunity to interact with words, interact with text. So we're going to look at some tools for that purpose. And of course, tip number three, capture their voice. So that's, we're going to kind of do an overview today, is make sure that as we're talking about early literacy, we have all of those there. So a question I have for you, and you're welcome to find that chat and answer over there if you'd like. When I say early literacy, what are some of the components that come to mind? What are some things to come to mind? I say early literacy. You say, what are some thoughts that pop into your mind when I say early literacy? If you don't mind, find that chat. You might want to find the button that says switch it from panelists to panelists and attendees. If you're not familiar with the chat in Zoom, it might be hiding under three dots somewhere. So someone just said fluency, right? Make sure you pull that drop-down menu from panelists to panelists and attendees. There's a blue button that says panelist. Oh, Celeste says learning letter sounds and phonemic awareness. Awesome. Phonemic awareness. Definitely a component of early literacy. Letter ID, sounds, phonics. See some of you sharing in the chat. Wonderful. What are some of those components of early literacy? I'll tell a story, and that story is that a couple years ago, I was part of a district collaborative on early literacy, and we were talking about, just how do you define that, right? You say that word literacy. What does it mean to be literate? And it took us hours to kind of, break it all down, talking about those pieces. You can read, you can write, your phonics, like all of that. It took us days and days and days. And as we were looking, this collaborative, really trying to come together, one thing that came to us was this graphic done by the Arizona Department of Education that talked about the 5 pillars of early literacy. So as I go through today, these are going to be the components that I'm going to cover. And of course, there is a lot to each of these, but really this is the focus that I kind of like try to lean toward, simply because it is very cohesive and it's very complete when you're talking about that early literate child. Phonemic awareness, that one was called out by several of you over there in the chat. Phonics, of course, being that next layer. Fluency, vocabulary development, and comprehension. Those really are the 5 pillars that we want to make sure there, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary development, comprehension. That's the lens we're going to kind of be diving into this with. And the first one, of course, is just remember, We want kids to interact with text. We want to understand those foundations and what they are. But really, let's talk about phonemic awareness and phonics, and how might we use technology to support that in a remote and learning or blended learning environment. So the first tool we're going to take a quick dive into, remember this good introduction to this idea of early literacy, is Google's Jamboard. Now, I'm curious over in chat for those of you who are here, if you found the chat, again, remember, sometimes it's hiding under 3 dots. On a scale from like 0, what's a Jamboard, Susan, to 5, I'm creating and using Jamboards with my learners daily. I'm curious, what's your experience with Jamboard so far? So on a scale from 0, what's a Jamboard, to I create and share Jamboards with my learners regularly, what's your experience? Oh, we've got a pretty wide variety of experience here. We've got 5s down to 2s. Awesome. So it seems like there might be some experience there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick dive into Jamboard through the lens of early childhood education, and specifically through that lens of phonics and phonemic awareness. So if you're newer to Jamboard, you may or may not know some of the mechanics, so I'll go ahead and do that there. I'm going to go open up a Jamboard. Remember, Jamboard is a tool by Google. It's part of your Google Suite. It's part of the core suite, which means it lives right in your Google Drive. It's something that your domain has access to. Now, occasionally, people don't know that that's a part they have to turn on, but Jamboard is a part of the core suite of tools by Google Education. And when we're introducing new tools to learners, before we make it about the content, because we're going to talk phonics and phonemic awareness in Jamboard in just a moment. But remember, when we're first introducing a tool, especially to our young learners, we want to make sure that we offer them an activity that has a very low cognitive load, right? Something that's not hard for them to understand. So when you see this basic example here, I have an activity that might be appropriate for learners as young as pre-K, where we could have them just cast a vote, right? Quick, simple idea. I could have them jump into this Jamboard with me. Now, again, Jamboard, of course, being something that's googly, which that means I can share it lots of ways. One way I could share my Jamboard would be right now live in this chat. Jamboard technically has a limit of 50 users. Sometimes after 30, it gets a little finicky. So for those of you who are able to jump into this Jamboard, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and give you a link to this Jamboard. Essentially, what I'm about to do is I'm going to take a single Jamboard and I'm going to hand you a pin, right? I'm going to hand you a pin to my Jamboard right now, because as we get rolling, I would love for you to participate in these phonics and phonemic awareness activities as if you were students doing small group instruction in a remote learning environment. So here I have this, and right now I had a scaffold with my teeny tinies, like with the really little learners, and I put in their names on the stickies, but you're welcome to add your own name if you'd like to. So if you want to go ahead and try this, if you're feeling like getting a little hands-on, we're going to do a couple phonics and phonemic awareness activities with kids. Now, again, if this is the first time I'm doing a Jamboard with really young learners, we're not going to get collaborative. I'd probably distribute it through Google Classroom, or maybe I would just model with it to start. But let's go ahead and have a little fun. Right now, here, if you don't mind, if you would, go ahead. Is the large partner part of Jamboard? No, that is my extension. It's called Custom Cursor, and I'm sure we can find you a link for it in a couple minutes. It's an extension I have called Custom Cursor. Isn't it cute though? So if you want to jump into the Jamboard, you can click on that link, and you can see there. And if you want, right now, if you want to just stick on frame 1, if you're familiar with Jamboard, you know that there are multiple pages, but go ahead and just grab one of those and slide it over, or you can cast your own vote. Team cat, team dog, right? Team cat, team dog. You would have the kids grab their name. Now, having them have their name already is a scaffold for the teeny tinies, right? For the little ones, we may put the names on the buttons, on the stickies for them, simply so it'll save the time of trying to get the 4-year-olds typing their name. So a quick little activity, right? So we've got the idea. If you're newer to Jamboard, take a peek, a look at the top of the page. You'll see it says page 1 of 11. We're going to go to frame 2, which means I'm going to click on the button that says 1 of 11, and I'm just going to jump over to frame 2, because now that we get the idea, we're all in there. You're going to see a series of photos. So click to the top, and where it says 1 of 11, and join me on frame 2. Don't do anything yet. I'll give you some instructions in just a moment. It's kind of like kids, when you put manipulatives on the table, they all go grabbing at them, right? So go ahead and jump over on frame 2 if you don't mind, because now I want to start talking the business, right? The business of phonics and phonic awareness. When it comes to that, the difference, of course, between phonics, phonemic awareness is the presence of letters. This activity on frame 2 is a phonemic awareness activity. There are no letters here, right? It's just talking about the sounds and the sounds of these CVC words. The second I put a letter, like that squiggly thing that represents a sound, the symbols, it's a phonics activity. Right now, it's still phonemic awareness because there are no marks. I can use my laser pointer in my whole group or my small group, and I can say, okay, friends, will you say the sounds with me? Let's say each sound here. K, ah, t. Will you say the sounds again with me? K, ah, t. So again, whole group, small group, whatever it is. Hey, let's put those sounds together. What are the three sounds? It says cat, right? And so I could go through. My Jamboard could start as a simple way for me to demonstrate some phonemic awareness activities, right? I'm going to switch over to the second page there. And if you're new to Jamboard, this is going to be a little bit of fun. If you have played with Jamboard before, you've probably done that, but I'm going to go over to frame 3. If you want to join me, you're welcome to, or you could just watch too. It's up to you if you how much you want to participate. But another reason why I love using Jamboard with young learners is because the simple idea of letter formation, right? Part of phonics and phonemic awareness is being able to just form letters. So I can form my letters. Now, right now I'm doing it with my trackball mouse and it's not so great. A cool thing about Jamboard is that I can download the app on, like, say, my phone or on an iPad, and I can actually write directly on it. Sometimes I'll pull up my Jamboard because it's Google. I just open it on the app in my phone and I'll use a stylus. You don't need a $100 Apple Pencil. You can actually write directly on a phone with a $1 stylus and practice letter formation. So if you're in the Jamboard right now and you want to just give a little squiggle, feel free to grab one of the pen tools there within the Jamboard. Remember, we're just talking about forming letters. I might have the students practice writing letters, maybe using the laser pointer. I could have them practice writing their name. This is one thing that's missing from Google Slides. Like, right, Google Slides is missing that tool to directly write, especially if your kids have touch devices. Really great way for them to practice letter formation, because we know that part of, phonics phonemic awareness is also being able to just form the letters. There's different colors, there's some different styles, lots of ways we can annotate. But when we're talking about basics, maybe I just want to start writing, I can use Jamboard for that. Let's get slightly more academic though. Join me on frame 4, but don't click on anything yet. Now, if you don't want to play along, you're welcome just to come back over to Zoom and stay and watch. That's fine. Join on frame 4, but don't click, right? There's a layer of classroom management that has to happen when you're doing some small group instruction with your Jamboard, simply because that is true, right? They can click and do all kinds of things. So you do teach them, especially the young learners, how to be very intentional about how we do this. So for example, I'm thinking of something that starts with a T sound. And I could call on a friend and I can ask them, make sure you switch over to your pointer tool. You have to be on the pointer tool. It's the arrow. And, find something that starts with T. And I could call on a particular friend, maybe one of the students in my class. Will you find something that starts with T? And part of my instruction, I could have a particular, you guys can go ahead and just grab whatever you want. Go ahead and grab an item and do a word sort. But of course, with learners in a virtual learning environment, if you're making marks, make sure you go switch from your pen tool over to your, there we go. So we could do this. So what's fun here is, like, this again, we're probably a little bit more orderly with our students, but great way to just do a quick little word sort activity. We're doing this synchronous right now. There's one Jamboard and we're all working in one place. Great for collaboration, great for whole group live instruction or small group live instruction. A good thing to know about Jamboard though is I could take this very Jamboard and I can actually distribute it to my learners through Google Classroom. You get a Jamboard and you get a Jamboard and you get a Jamboard. Another way I can use Jamboard is as an accountability piece, or a way for learners to measure or show what they know, because we could talk about things that start with and things that start with T. But what I want to know is what you know, right? So right now we're working collaboratively, but if I wanted to have you do it independently on your own in an asynchronous activity, I could also take this Jamboard and assign it via Google Classroom. So just another way that we could use that. A few more things here. If you flip over to frame 5, you see another word sort. In this example, we've used Jamboard for this activity, and don't click on anything yet. But I'm going to go ahead and build these words. Like, I could go ahead and get on my pointer tool, and I'm going to do this as a lesson, right? This isn't my I do, so friends, don't click. And I'm going to build a word. Ooh, friends, I built a word. I see some letters. I'm going to grab my pointer. Will you say the sounds with me? What's the first sound? Okay, next sound, E. And after that, G. Let's say the whole thing. What's the whole thing? Pig, right? So we can do this, and then I can call on a friend, right? Will you build the next one for me, please? And so those of us who are working within the Jamboard, we could use this. These are like flashcards. And even if you're meeting in person with kids, the idea of passing materials back and forth, if you've had if you've been lucky enough to have kids in your room physically again, we know that there is more of a monitoring of what kind of interactions we have. So we can continue to use Jamboard simply because we can use these as flashcards or pocket chart activities that we normally would have had kids work on in class by touching them. We can still use Jamboard to have some of that, letter manipulation, rearranging of activities. As you continue on through, you'll see there's a handful more activities. If you just want to kind of flip through the pages, I'm going to talk about one of these other ones in a bit, but just so you know, again, phonics, phoneme awareness is the starting space, right? That's the starting space of things we can do in Jamboard. I'm going to jump back over to my main presentation and come back here in a few minutes, but really just want to make sure you know that there's a lot of potential for teaching phonics and phonemic awareness small group using Google's Jamboard. As I continue on in the presentation though, I want to talk about some of those other pillars, right? We want to talk about the other pillars of early literacy. Talk about fluency, vocabulary development, and comprehension, because those are other components of early literacy that we want to make sure we think about. How might we reinforce vocabulary development? How might we talk about comprehension using some of these tools? I'm going to do another googly one right now. Don't worry, I'll get off of the Google in just a second and show you some other stuff. But of course, one of my favorite ways to use a very traditional tool, a Google form, is as a listening activity. We know as early childhood educators the benefit of young learners hearing a fluent model read text aloud. So many studies about language development and the word gap, and it really comes back to this. We want our learners to hear text, talking, reading, singing. It's a part of their literacy, their early literacy development, is being able to hear that fluent model read text aloud. So one thing I like to assign to my learners of all ages is what I call a digital listening center. Now, if you've been in the classroom for a while, you remember the times when we'd have the thing that we stuck all the headphone jacks into and all the kids would listen to the book, right? Listening centers have changed a lot over the years. There are tools like Epic Books, and of course, all of the YouTube where you can hear examples of text being read aloud. I like using a Google form for this purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this and show you how our kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2 students hear books read aloud. When we're meeting synchronously, we're so limited on time these days, and there isn't always the time to just sit back and read a good book. How do I make sure that my learners are still getting exposed to lots of great literature? Well, what I'll do, it's a really fancy word I'm about to say, right? I embed a YouTube video into a Google form. Now, Google Forms pretty simple once you get familiar, but Google Forms are a tool within the Google Suite that allow you to do polls, surveys. A lot of times they're used for just gathering information, sometimes for quizzes. I use them as this listening center. In this particular Google form, you see the first question is, we have the kids write their name. So even our kindergartners, like that's a skill that we want them to be able to do. After that, you see the embedded YouTube video, right? What do I mean by that? Man, the video is going to play right here in the screen. When I hit play, you see it plays right there. And I love that, because when it comes to young learners, anytime I can have them not jump over to another window, that's winning, right? So I can have that YouTube video play right here within the screen. It is embedded in the form. And then as I continue on, if I'm working with young learners, another thing I can do is, after the students get to hear that great vocabulary, hear great literature read to them, I can have a teeny tiny accountability piece with kids in kindergarten or first grade. Maybe I just have it, did you like the book? Happy face emoji, sad face emoji. By using the Google form as this listening center, I can embed pictures. I can add pictures as the answer options. So even if my learners aren't quite yet readers, they can have success with this, right? They don't have to be readers to type their name, they know what this button does. They know what this button does, right? And then of course they can choose happy face or sad face. Now, if I have slightly older learners like second grade or third grade, maybe I might kick it up a notch and I might ask them to do some kind of text to self-reflection. So I might add an additional question where it's like, Jamie was very lazy and didn't have good work ethic. How can you show work ethic at school or at home? So taking that comprehension just up a notch or two simply by adding an additional question. Probably not something I do with the littlest ones, especially if they're new to this, but it's a great way for me to use Google Forms to support early literacy because they're getting to read or hear fluent models read the text. And someone just asked a question, can you embed Epic Books or Tumble Books? Currently, right now with Google Forms, it has to be a YouTube video. So unfortunately, we can't use the Epic Books or the Tumble Books here. It has to be something that is on YouTube. I'll say that that used to be true for Google Slides, and now you can pull videos from Drive. I imagine eventually maybe we'll be able to pull videos from Drive from here, but currently that is something that is only a YouTube video. But what a great way, a nice safe way for them to be able to access YouTube. Notice there's no comments. They're not actually going to YouTube. They're able to put the YouTube read aloud right here in the page. And maybe this is a video of the teacher reading the book too. You can find one there, or we can do it. So talking about getting that language development, we just want them to hear stories read aloud. What a great way for them to have that ability to listen to it, but also that tiny accountability piece. Forms are great because even if your little ones don't yet have their own Google accounts, I know we're moving to a place where a lot of kids actually do sign into their Google accounts, but I know there are places where maybe the kindergartners and first graders don't have a Google account yet. Guess what? They don't need a Google account to be able to do Google Form. Forms don't need a login. Forms don't require a particular device. Forms work on just about anything, even if it goes back to mom and dad's phone. They can listen to a story or listen to you read a story and have that tiny bit of accountability. So again, phonics, phonemic awareness, listening comprehension, because that helps support vocabulary development. Now, talking about text and early literacy, we want to make sure that we also talk about the other tool, right? Seesaw. So kind of veering away from Google for a few minutes, Seesaw is an amazing tool for developing early literacy. The things I've already discussed about phonics and phonemic awareness, you name the phonics skill and you're going to find not just one or two, but probably 30 things ready to use to help develop phonics and phonemic awareness. But taking it to the next level, talking about some kind of comprehension activities, Seesaw is full of great ways to do that. Now, as a Google girl, I'll tell you that if someone mentioned Seesaw to me like 4 years ago, I would have been like this, la, 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 I don't want to hear about it, Team Google, Team Google. But I'll tell you, regardless of which one is your favorite. I know sometimes your schools say you can only use this or you have to use this, but if you're fortunate enough to work somewhere where you have a choice, I'd say that you don't have to choose. Google Classroom, Seesaw work really well side by side. There isn't a lot of this, right? They don't necessarily integrate the way that some other tools do, but they work really well side by side. And even in our K2 classrooms, people are using both. But so when we're talking early literacy, let's talk about ways we might have our learners respond to text using Seesaw. So in these two examples, that really is the goal here. We're talking about text annotation. We're having them respond because we want them to demonstrate their comprehension. I'm going to click on this one and load it up. And hopefully you can hear this okay. In this example, you'll see kind of an app smash of sorts that's happened here. The kids read this book in Epic. So this was from Epic Books. And we used the Seesaw Reflect extension. If you haven't checked that out, it's a great way to take a screenshot of sorts, but it's a magical screenshot because whatever is on the student's screen, it captures ka-chink like a screenshot would, and it just bloop deposits it right into Seesaw for you. So what's happened is the student is reading a piece of text and we were trying to make some text to self connections. And we were talking about a penguin's diet. Let's listen to what the student has to say about this penguin book.
The text tells me that krill is small fish, and I like sushi, so I think I would like krill.
Right? So she said, the text tells me that krill is small fish, and I like sushi, so I think I would like krill, right? So not only is she, reading the text, but she's connecting to the text, right? That next level. I identified a vocabulary word. I used the context within the text there, and I even made that text to self connection. Hey, krill, fish. Hey, I like sushi. Maybe I would like krill. So all of that connection to their knowledge, like what do they already know, and how does that, help comprehension? And other examples here, this one on the right-hand side is an example of another book snap, right? Book snap, of course, being a play on Snapchat. But what we do it is right within Seesaw, we allow students to annotate a variety of ways. Annotating text is huge. I'm going to pop back over to the Jamboard for just a second because I want to make sure you realize annotating text can happen in Seesaw. We can circle, write, underline, lots of ways to do annotations in Seesaw. But if you're in a place where Seesaw is not an option for you, just know that you can also annotate text in a Jamboard. I'm still in here, and I just want you to see one great thing about Jamboard is that you can use a pen. That's something you can't do in a Google slide, because if I were doing an activity and I wanted to talk about text annotations, whether it was for fluency or for whatever purpose, I can mark up text. And this is something I can't do in a Google slide in this easy way. Maybe we're, reading for a purpose, and in here we're reading for dialogue, right? We want to start talking about, the way our voice changes when we read dialogue. So, when I'm talking about annotations, I can do annotations in Seesaw, but don't forget, I can also do annotations in Google. You don't have to pick a tool. You can do a lot of great things with both. So just remembering that annotations can happen in Seesaw. We can annotate, draw, circle, write, interact, record, but we can also do some of that stuff over in Google too. Going back to that Jamboard and talking about fluency, we know that fluency is the ability to read text aloud with the right rate, the right speed, the right intonation. When we're talking about this example here, we have dialogue, and we want students to be able to acknowledge how punctuation affects how they read. That's part of fluency, is acknowledging how punctuation helps you read. So in this example here, they've marked now the dialogue. So now when they go to read it, we know that our voice will change. Come on, Jen, says Chip. I feel lucky. Let's go catch some fish, right? So they've gone through and marked up the text that will help them with their fluency and intonation. So again, when you're talking about fluency, we could do that in Jamboard, or we can come over back to Seesaw, because there are a ton of great activities in Seesaw that will let you not just have students read text, but capture their voices as they read. So much potential when it comes to early literacy. But really, in the end, we know that we can use Google tools to really focus on all of those components, talking about phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary development, comprehension. Google has an answer. Seesaw has an answer. As we start wrapping up, I want to bring up this here, because this, of course, is just, kind of the introduction in part one to a larger project that we have coming up this month. We're doing a whole series on supporting early literacy. If you want to learn more about the entire course, right, several hours of content, as well as a success kit of tutorials and videos, that's what's available to you. If you want to learn a little bit more about the entire early literacy package, the entire early literacy success kit. If you want to learn more, the link is there, and I'm sure Lauren can get it to you in the chat as well. But what we have is a package of learning. It'll break down all of these activities. We'll go even deeper into some of the brain science and studies about the components of early literacy. It's a multi-part series of all of this, the how-to and how to put it together. And again, more information there available to you at edtech.team/PKit. That stands for the primary kit, but we're doing success kits. And the next one is going to be focused on early literacy. Next month, we're going to do another one, and it's all going to be about early math. But the next kit, the November kit, is going to be right here. So there you go. And we're going to start wrapping up, but I do see some questions there, and I do want to acknowledge that there. Now that Safe YouTube is no longer safely published YouTube videos. So I use one, Janny, I use one called ViewPure. ViewPure, like viewpure.com. And it's very similar to what Safe YouTube would do. It allows you to grab the URL to a YouTube video and pop it over there. Oh, and there's some additional information there about the primary teacher success kits and the projects we have going on with the success kits. Again, great projects. We did a lot of information today. We covered a lot, but know that within those success kits, we're breaking all of those down. How to build, and then each of those ideas with multiple examples and content for you. So again, if you have additional questions, I can stick around for a few minutes, but we really did want to just kind of give this idea. How might we support early literacy in a remote and blended learning environment? Lots and lots of ways. I hope you got some information there, but no, if you want to know more, we are really excited to have the success kits available for you. So thank you so much. And Lauren, did I get all those questions? I think I got most of them as we got along there. But
yeah, you answered most of them along the way. So we'll give it a couple more minutes and see if any other questions come on in. Everyone's saying thank you. They're very glad that you that we're going to give them your slides and the recording. So everyone will receive an email tomorrow with all of those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and then we're working on that November success kit right now. Excited to have some tutorials about how to develop your own Seesaw activities. We'll have some more tutorials about how to create some Jamboard activities. Oh, I see a question that says, does Jamboard offer a mic for recording? It's not an embedded tool, so you could use an additional tool like a Screencastify or a Loom. Like you need a screen recorder. Students on iPads can use the onboard screen recorder. So not by default, Elizabeth. So there isn't a built-in screen recorder, but you can definitely record the screen using some additional tools. Alrighty. Got some more. And then you are welcome. Awesome, awesome.
Okay, I think those are all the questions. I know Susan she has such long days. She does so many of these sessions for us, training teachers and then working with teachers all day. And we so appreciate all of your time and all this wonderful support that you provide for everyone. And thank you to everyone for joining us live. And again, you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to access this recording and Susan's slides. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Susan.